Good morning, everyone. We're just to continue contract labor negotiations between the city of Boise and the Boise Police Union. For the record, I'd like everyone to go around and introduce themselves. My name is Courtney Washburn. I'm the chief of staff for this.
Todd Hanchett with Stoll Reeves.
Ron Weininger, Chief of Police.
Guy Allen, counsel for the union.
Damon Union.
Darren Lee Union. AJ Veens Union.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your patience yesterday afternoon. We had a fair bit of work to do, given all of the proposals that the union passed yesterday. So we have taken some time to work through those and prepared today to respond to some of those proposals and to also provide some of the proposals that the city has related to economic items. Why don't I start with, we'll start with the responses and other proposals that we have. One in now. Start with I just dropped the city's counter to union proposal I, which relates to workout time. And the proposal, the counter that we have is the city would be willing to agree to create. I need to correct one thing there. It says 2 physical evaluations. We would like to make that 1 physical evaluation that members can participate in to pass either the post physical readiness test or an equivalent test. That's the language that the union had proposed. The physical evaluation will take place 1 time per calendar year and is optional to attend. And then upon successful completion, union members would receive a wellness bonus of $300.
Is there a reason you wanted to change it from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 1? 2 times a year was just more of a, the ultimate goal is for wellness. So if you had 2 times to complete that, is there any reason?
Well, it's just having to administer it twice a year.
Yeah.
It's going to take work. It's going to take time. We thought that would be sufficient for everyone to, I don't think people will take it twice if you're only getting paid once.
Well,
so
no,
it's not going to ensure.
Couldn't schedule it or couldn't make the schedule. It's more of a.
But we would offer it, I think, over multiple days. So when we say once, 1 time per year, but we recognize that people have, somebody might be working and can't do it on that day, or, we would want to make it available.
Okay. So
There'll be multiple sessions to.
Okay. So not just
Not just one day,
15th,
right.
10 a.m.
Okay.
On
Okay.
Tuesday is the time.
So you'd offer multiple times in case someone was out of town.
Right.
Okay.
There would have to be, knowing a 24/7 operation, right? We can never get everybody together at one particular time, but we'll administer it 1 time per year over a series of days to try to accommodate schedules.
Yeah. Perfect.
Would you be opposed to a counter, maybe a counter from us with language that reflected that? Or to have some language that says, hey, we're gonna, whatever this frame of days, so it's specific, so it's in there that says, hey, we're gonna.
Of course.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we want the same thing.
Yeah.
We want
Yes.
folks to have the opportunity to take it, and we want folks to take it.
Any questions?
Understood.
Okay. Next up, let's see. City counter to union proposal L. This is the section for compensation regarding on-call and call-out pay. So what we've done as our proposal is actually, we thought it might make sense to simplify this process, and the proposal would provide that the first bullet point remains unchanged in terms of members who are assigned to the specific units receiving the pay for the on-call duty. The change to the second bullet point would make all other members who are called out, they would receive a minimum of 3 hours of overtime. So that would replace the 2 hours of overtime currently in that section, which applies currently to members in the patrol division. And then our proposal is to strike the third bullet point, which provides for 4 hours of call out pay for specific units. So this is redlined against the union's proposal, not current language.
Okay. Red line against proposal, not current language.
Correct.
Okay.
Because it includes.
The inclusion of those other groups, the specified
Yeah.
groups.
Mhm.
Okay.
And to give rationale or the thought process behind it, when we're talking about a minimum amount of time for a call out, we're really looking at those times when you're called out and either you didn't really need to be there or you get canceled pretty quickly. We're talking about the inconvenience of being called out from home. And we're looking at raising that for everyone so that it's a more fair proposition across the board. Recognizing that if you are called out to a whatever, if you're a detective and you're called out to a sexual assault investigation and you actually work that investigation, it's probably going to result in more than 3 hours anyway. So nobody's really losing if they're called out and actually work for a period of time. It's those times when you're called out and then 15 minutes later, say you have an SOU call out, everybody rolls and then the guy gives up. And everybody has to turn around and go home. For the inconvenience of that, rather than 2 hours, we're saying across the board, give it 3 hours to everybody. But then eliminate the 4 hour compensation for additional detectives or school resource officers or whoever else that would traditionally get a 4 hour, they will get a 3 hour. That makes sense.
Yes. Union understands. I think we have no further questions on that.
Okay. Mhm. Yeah, you're right. Right. Yeah. Just a point of clarification on that proposal. I think the way that we drafted it
Back to L.
on L, yes.
Okay.
We added all other members. And Chief just pointed out that should say all members. So we're not excluding the folks in the first bullet point. Does that make sense? They received this too,
Okay, so this is actually encompassing everybody.
right?
So this is not an.
So that was a,
First paragraph, okay.
right.
So I just want to be clear that, so those detectives, those units already get 4. We're decreasing them from 4 to 3.
Okay,
Okay.
Which is, as I explained, if they come out and work a case, they're probably gonna be out and get the actual time that
I'm gonna change it right there.
they work. We're just talking about those cases that they come out and the inconvenience of coming out and then getting canceled an hour in, 15 minutes in, whatever it is. So the 4 becomes 3 for everybody.
everybody across the board. Okay, so that language just changes to all.
Yeah, I just modified it.
Understood. I see that. Okay.
Okay, ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I just moved in city counter to union's proposal on FTO pay. And what this proposal does is it removes the, I'll call it the standing 5% differential for just having status as an FTO. It removes that. It increases from 5% to 8% the differential paid for actively working as an FTO. And we extended there was language in there about the additional incentive automatically expiring. We retained that language and pushed that for 2 years. So to a midway point in this contract.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Reflective of a 4-year.
So that was my. So kind of our question over here is at the end of this proposal, it says it expires effective September 30th, 2026.
Mhm.
Are we trying to reflect this for our 4-year contract, or are we just trying to push it another 2?
Just to push this for another 2
Okay,
is the proposal.
okay,
So it would not push it for the life of the contract that we're currently talking about.
so there would need to be some type of MOU meeting in 2 years where we rehash this out is what to be clear.
For it to continue, there would need to be further discussion.
We would need to meet in 2 years and revisit this.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's our only question at this time.
So I guess I'm a little, we didn't send you a proposal on that. We just went to memorialize what we agreed to about 6 months ago. And so your counter is actually lessening what they're getting paid. You took them from 10% to 8%. Now they don't get paid. So like the only thing you took percentages away and then you added, now you can shoulder tap someone to be an FTO. Is that what I'm?
No, the additional incentive was expiring under the current agreement. Your proposal was to extend it,
Just memorialize it, yeah.
to extend it,
Yep.
and our counter is to increase the amount permanently for folks who are doing that work, not permanently, for the life of this next
Okay,
Yeah,
period specified.
I think we've got our clarifying question.
I got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, next one we have for you is a proposal on canine pay. Our proposal on canine pay is to instead of the current half hour per day when not scheduled to work. And so just to make sure we're on the same page, if you're working 410s, it's going to be 3 days a week, half hour. Our proposal is to increase that to 2 hours per week, and strike the language related to when not scheduled to work, just pay straight 2 hours a week. At the regular rate of pay for each officer who's performing canine duties. It also eliminates the language that requires such time must be actually spent and accounted for on the electronic pay system. I mean, from our standpoint, they're caring for the canines. They have them in their possession, right? So we don't need to add, this sort of verification process. We think that's unnecessary.
Okay. I don't believe there's any questions on the side for this. Thank you.
Next proposal we have this is a city proposal, not a response. I still have some more responses, but staying with the compensation section. This is a proposal on comp time that would, well, first of all, there's a couple of cleanup items. I think I changed the contract references for D2, and I think that should be for E2. But you can double check that.
Okay.
The comp time provision, we have a proposal would increase the from 72 hours to 1 week, the amount of time in advance that the time must be requested. In addition, it would reduce the cap from 480 hours to 240 hours. And of course, instead of, once they reach that, it would just be paid as overtime as opposed to going into the comp time bank. I think that is, oh, there was just a like it's just some cleanup stuff on the missed mandatory training. I think that should be 2, not F, which would make special events then sub 3, not sub 2, but
And then the removal of the language for a buy down on the second paycheck in October.
correct. Because effectively it's being, the buy down is it's being paid as you go once you hit that cap, as opposed to buying down once you exceed it in October.
Okay. No questions from the union?
All right. Let me talk, we don't have a written counter, but on the union's VIBA proposal. Yeah, I'll get back to it too.
Real quick.
You have it.
I have it up, yes.
So the union's proposal is to increase from 1% to 1.5%. The contribution to the VIBA account. The city is open to that. We're not in a position to TA it because we're in the middle of economics. And so if that's, if that's, once we kind of get to the final analysis, if that's where the membership wants to contribute those dollars as opposed to somewhere else, we're fine with that. What I don't want to do is just TA it right now because it can't stand alone, I guess, because we'd be sort of baking it in and it's going to affect everything else that we talk about.
Yes.
So across the table, I want you to know we're willing to agree to that.
Okay.
But we need to kind of work through the rest of this and
Yeah, I think it's akin to the working out of classification clause, the same thing. It's dependent on base wages, what those are gonna be set in that case, and so.
right.
As we wait for economics to finish out.
Yep.
Understood.
And then all right, so I would like to provide you with a similar response to the sergeant admin pay proposal.
Written or unwritten?
Just a verbal.
Okay.
The proposal is, as you'll recall, the union's proposal is to add the,
It's gonna be proposed.
Union M. So
Yes.
just clear, we're talking about Union M.
so the union's proposal, the city is agreeable to that as well. But again, this is sort of in the context of the larger costs associated. And so we're telling you we're agreeable to it, but it's not probably the right time to TA it. But you can note that however you like, a smiley face or what have you. Whatever works.
Okay. And just again, for confirming, that's union proposal M, Sergeant M.
It is Union M.
Okay.
From the 24th.
Okay. Understood.
Next. Yeah, for you. Next one up is, I've titled it a counter to the union's CID proposal. But it's just to be clear, it's a rejection of the CID proposal, and our proposal would be to keep the current language, which is the 2.75% incentive for members assigned as detectives. But the counter is that the city will agree to pay a 4% incentive pay to SROs in conjunction with the move to a 5/8 schedule as proposed by the city.
I don't believe there's any questions on union side for this.
Okay.
Understood.
So I have a verbal response on, there's a few other items that I want to make sure that we circle back on. The proposed union's proposal regarding certification pay. I think that was a $15 across the board increase. The city would reject that. We don't think that increase is particularly necessary under the circumstances, so we're rejecting that proposal. I think we can lump a few of these things together, provide you a response all at once, and that is the proposal regarding bilingual pay, parental leave, shift differential, and vacation caps. So our reading of the union's proposals was those are intended to mirror what the general employees with the city receive. And, from our standpoint, if the union wants the benefits that the general employees receive, we're happy to move everyone over and provide that, full range of benefits. But the difference is these have been negotiated over time. You have a specific set of benefits that has been negotiated for, and frankly, just cherry picking doesn't work for the city. And so that's why we are rejecting those. Specifically, a note on the parental leave issue. Of course, the city wants to support parents who are having children. And the leave policy that the city employees have does that in a certain way. There are other benefits that the union has that the general employees, like I said, don't. And so it's a balancing sort of between those two things. And like I said, the kind of picking and choosing doesn't work particularly well.
Okay. Just to clarify, bilingual, I just want to make sure I got these four. Bilingual, shift diff, parental, and then did you have certification for the fourth? What was
vacation caps?
Okay, sorry.
Those were the four that we identified that were
okay
aligned with the general employees.
Understood.
Okay. We'll move on, we'll move in our base pay proposal. Okay, so we'll start with the opening proposal that we have related to percentage increases. And those would be over the life of a 4-year contract, 2211. And we can return to that in a moment. I want to talk about the language changes that would be in the, well, let me make that more clear. Appendix A is where the pay is set out. In the contract itself, section 4, sub A, talks about the increases and how they will occur. And so the proposal would state that the base pay for all members shall be fixed as set forth in Appendix A to this agreement. Base pay shall increase as set forth in Exhibit A, effective the next pay period after October 1, 2024, or ratification of this agreement by the union and approval of this agreement by Boise City Council, whichever occurs later. And so this gets to the conversation that we had early on about the retro pay issue and the difficulties associated with that, and why we're wanting to reach agreement well in advance, as well as the administrative difficulties associated with what I'll call a midstream, mid-pay period change. It's much simpler for the city to make the change as of a full pay period. And so that's what we're intending to accomplish with that proposed language. The other thing that I would like to note is that, so we costed the union's proposal just on base wages, and the increase was the proposed increase over the life of contract for base wages alone would be about $12.5 million. I don't know if you ran numbers yourself, but that's what we ended up with.
Okay.
But I wanted to pass that along in case you hadn't done the math, or if you think that the math looks different than that, but
Okay.
that's what it looks like to us.
What's the math on your proposed increase look like?
3.5. That I think we have responded to all of the union's economic items. And we have all of ours out in terms of economic items.
Would the city be able to give a little bit of reasoning behind? It's clear that there's quite a disparity between the union's proposal for base wages and the city's proposal for base wages. How did the city get to the numbers they got to in regards to a 2211 versus what the union proposed?
Well, so, as what we're looking at is, as I've mentioned, I think a couple times, the total compensation associated with the proposal. And so each of these economic items has a cost. That's where within, the parameters that within which we are operating, that was an appropriate place for us to make an opening proposal in light of the other cost items. So It's a negotiation. And that's the appropriate place for us to start.
What was the total of your other items with the base wage?
I don't have that right now.
Do you guys, and I don't know if you have these numbers right now, do you guys know how much this would impact the general fund on the union's total compensation package versus the city's proposed compensation package? How much that would impact the general fund?
We're just talking about base wages.
We can talk about base wages, that's fine. Talk the 6% of base wages over 4 versus the 23 on base wages over 4, how much that would impact the general fund of the city?
I don't have that right now.
Okay. I believe that is all our, I don't have any other questions, and.
Okay.
It's going to take a while
Yep.
for us to eat this and kind of digest it and work through it. I don't even.
Let's just start at 90 minutes and then we'll touch.
Yeah,
base with it.
yeah,
I'm sure you don't want to just go all the way to 1
yeah, we'll need,
and like literally eat while you're
yeah, we might need.
digesting the information.
It's true, yeah, I am hungry.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I
It's
think,
10 already, right?
yeah, it's already 10. We'll just go to lunch and then we'll do.
Call it 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we'll
And
work
let
from
us
there.
know if your timing varies from that.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay,
sounds good.
thank you.
And we'll be working on.
We're all here, so yeah.
Okay. Food analogies are coming out. Okay, we appreciate the city having us the time to start to work through some of these proposals. We do have further questions in regards to city counter to union proposal I. And that is the physical readiness test bonus. And I'll start by saying I think we are all in agreement in theory on what we're trying to accomplish here. We just have questions on what the language is reading, reflecting on what we've spoken about at the table. So we just need some. In the third paragraph of that proposal, it speaks, city agrees to create 2 physical evaluation events in which union members can participate to pass the Idaho post-physical readiness test or an equivalent test as set up by the wellness committee. The following paragraph then says, the physical evaluation will take place 1 time per calendar year and is optional to attend. And I know that we'd spoken a little bit about what that means, trying to define evaluation events, having 2 of them, but then they need to take place on 1 calendar time. And within that 1 time being multiple sessions, we're just trying to tighten up language here because it looks like what was written is a little contradictory. So we just want to make sure we're correct on that.
Right. So, and I understand why. When I made the revisions, I neglected to redline the first bullet point to reflect a single evaluation. So I can correct that.
Okay.
So that we have a proposal that says city agrees to create a physical evaluation event in which union members can participate to pass the Idaho post-physical readiness.
Okay.
Physical readiness.
So just in the third paragraph, the create 2 physical evaluations, removing that language and just having 1 physical evaluation event.
Right.
And then as we spoke about verbally within that event, we work 24/7, like you said. So maybe having just like
Multiple options.
multiple options, just like a training. Okay, thank you. That gives
Yeah,
us
that's the
clarity to
intent.
work with.
Yep.
Okay. And is that gonna be a kind of a proposal back to us that we should wait for?
We certainly can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Much appreciated.
Yep, we'll do that.
And one thing in speaking amongst ourselves, and we wanted to kind of get stamped down real quick, is we do not have any further tentative dates scheduled at this point.
Right.
I know, I assumed at some point we're gonna bring that up. And I know scheduling has been difficult at best, so I think that's probably something we should address now. Whether you guys, I'm not asking for dates right now, but just as we can bring that up and if that needs to be an email between the two of us. But this is our last officially scheduled date, so we'll need to
Right.
set something up further.
Yeah, why don't we plan that we will compare calendars and then we'll send you availability, sort of first available.
Okay.
With a number of options.
Okay, kind of like that, yeah, and I think last time that worked well.
Yep.
We're able to work with that.
Will do.
Okay. Moving on to how the rest of our time was spent trying to work through this. As you guys are aware, this is a lot of proposals, a large package. This is something that we're gonna have to continue working through. I'm gonna guess we're not gonna get through it today. And so we'll keep working after this is done, but I just don't feel like it would be fair to you guys to make you guys sit in a room. We can work that way. We can
Yeah.
give you hourly updates if you'd like. I'm just trying to predict out ahead of time. I have a feeling that we're not gonna get through today, and so
Mhm.
I just don't want to keep you guys sitting in a room if you don't need to sit in a room,
Yep.
to be frank.
No, appreciate that.
As you guys know, well aware, we have to take this to our membership, kind of feel the temperature of what's going on right now. There are some concerns on our side, especially in regards to, as I spoke about before, kind of the disparity between our base wages. I do not think that our initial proposal was unreasonable. Averaging that out over the 4 years, we're staying a little above inflation with that. It's concerning for us that the initial proposal from the city puts us well below general conservative estimates for inflation. The reason I bring this up is because having this recording and live stream, there's a lot of members who are watching this now that we were currently speaking with. This is all about messaging. As we go to the membership, is there any outside of the proposal itself, people are pretty frustrated at the initial proposal. Now, as you said earlier, I understand it's a negotiation. There are those who maybe don't grasp that. Is there any other thing you want to tell the membership or let them know as we take this back to them that they can
Yeah, why don't,
hear any type of messaging or message that you want to give them, Chief, that they,
well, I think, not to jump in front of you on this, but I think, what I think we might want to do is have someone come in and speak about the city budget process and what that looks like and where the money originates. And so we could, and we need to check availability, but we might be able to have somebody still this afternoon on short notice and give at least an overview of kind of what we're working with on our side when it comes to putting things like this together and how it fits within the bigger city budget picture.
okay,
I think that would be probably helpful for everybody to understand some of the projections and some of the fiscal outlooks and what the city has to work with.
okay. We appreciate that.
So I would suggest rather than, I appreciate not wanting to keep us here while you do your work, but I think what we should do is you all can go continue to do the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
We'll go figure out schedules and let you know when we can get somebody in, hopefully this afternoon,
Okay,
to talk through that.
okay.
And we can keep moving forward, I think, that way.
The union would be agreeable with that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, excellent.
So it's about 150 right now, 153. Are we wanting hourly updates or how do you guys want to operate on that?
Well, so let us start with working on our schedules on our side just to see if we can get the right person in here
Okay.
to do that. And then I will come I don't know how this works for the meeting necessarily, but I will come let you know when that can be, if it can be this afternoon.
Okay,
And then maybe what we can have them do is update on the screen, confirm the time that we're coming back.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Maybe to just speed things up, if we can compare schedules now too, see if we can get anything on the books today. Or moving forward.
For dates, you're saying?
Yeah, dates.
Yeah,
Scheduled
okay,
Yeah, we'll work on that.
okay.
Do you have anything, like in the time that you've been working, do you have anything that we could
No,
consider, cross off the list, anything?
No.
like that? You're not.
No. Work in progress. Okay, so we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so we'll
Okay.
break for now. I'll come let you know what the afternoon schedule looks like.
Okay.
And then we'll get this updated and
Enough.
everybody will know when we're getting back together.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Charge my laptop very much at all.
All right, so we have we just introduced Eric here to speak a little bit about the budget financial process in response to the questions that we had from the union. So I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks very much. And for the record, my name is Eric Villamoria. I serve as the Chief Budget Officer here for the city. So I'm just going to do a few slides to go over our kind of financial picture, focusing on property tax, some salary growth figures, and then cost escalation things. The clicker would be, no? We're off to,
You
I
think-
know, it's on, it's
You think if I start touching this?
maybe, girl. Let's see.
Oh.
Oh, I can do that.
Sure.
Okay.
Don't.
All right, so most of this is just kind of grounding. So the first kind of grounding slide is within the general fund budget, which is where we account for the majority of, actually for all of our general governmental services. You can see that public safety represents just over half of everything that is spent out of the general fund. Public safety being police and fire. You can see the next biggest department being Parks and Recreation. Our support departments representing like human resources, IT, finance, and legal. So I'm going to talk about property taxes a little bit here. So just a high-level overview, property taxes typically represent about 2/3 of our budget. Sometimes it's a little bit less, sometimes it's a little bit more. But it is overwhelmingly our largest revenue stream. One of the things that's nice about property taxes is that when we set the budget, there's really very little deviation between the budgeted amount that's set and what we actually receive. So it's a fairly dependable resource because it's a budget-driven system. When we develop the budget every year, there are two ways that the budgeted revenue estimate for property taxes can increase over the prior year. So the first is we can do a base increase on existing payers. So everybody that was in the system last year and the total tax bill associated with everybody in the system that prior year, you can increase the budget by up to 3%. And typically those costs go to support cost increases with our existing services. So whether it be compensation adjustments for the people that are, authorized to be here, whether it be for fuel, whether it be for, supplies, things like that. But that's the first piece. And then the second piece is new construction and annexation. So when there is new growth, the tax associated with that comes into the city as well, and that's on top of the elective up to 3% increase. And that growth is generally used to support new costs. So when we add new police officers, new firefighters, new parks maintenance staff, that's typically how we support that cost. So this pie chart kind of demonstrates all of the general fund revenue streams. And I won't go into a ton of detail here, but you can see for fiscal year 25 preliminarily, we're expecting property tax to be about 60% of total general fund revenues.
Is that typical?
It is.
More or less?
It is. It's usually about 60% to 2/3. Yep. And on the right, try to segregate it a little bit, because even though we have a number of different revenue streams that are accounted for within the general fund, we look at them differently. So those that are available for general purposes are about 76% of the total general fund. That would include our property tax, sales tax, liquor tax, franchise fees, and then reimbursements that we receive from the airport and from the sewer fund for services provided on their behalf. So that's that 76% there. There's other revenues that come in, departmental revenue. So you can think about things like our parks and recreation fees or reimbursements for police services from the Boise School District or from Boise State University, and then development fees. Those are service reimbursements. So we try and receive what we spend, but we can't use that for new growth or for new items. And then we have a small bucket of the general fund that really we don't count upon for ongoing budget balancing. Part of that would be carry forward and fund balance. That's because it's it's a one-time revenue. We do try and account for savings from one year that goes into the next, but we can't make any ongoing decisions based on that. We account for fines and forfeitures within that category, and then there are certain other revenues, and that's primarily grant receipts. So focusing in on that first bucket, that 76%, you can see that it's predominantly property taxes. So hence the focus on property taxes when we're trying to look at overall revenue growth and how we support increasing costs. So this slide shows historical performance from fiscal year 2019 up into the current year in terms of property tax growth, as well as compensation adjustments for fire staff, police staff, and general employees. And just to orient to the slide, this purple line here represents property tax growth, property tax base growth. So again, tying back to that 0 to 3% elective increase that the council can decide to take. And you can see that it's, we had a couple of years of 3%. We had a year of 0% during COVID. We popped up to 3%. And then the last 2 years, we've been below 3% as well. 2% for the current fiscal year, 2.45 the year before. For at least the first 4 years of this chart, general employees' compensation has been equal to what property tax has grown by. So 3 in fiscal year 21, there was no base increase for general employees. And then you can see in fiscal year 23, there was somewhat of a correction. We were experiencing very high vacancy levels. So there was a higher increase. And then in fiscal year 24, a smaller gap. Fire is the white line, and you can see, just under 4%, spiking up to 9%, and then 7% in fiscal year 24. And then police represented on the orange line here, and you can see just below in fiscal year 24 from where fire is, a little bit above where the general employees were, all quite a bit above where property taxes were.
Real quick, that last slide, I appreciate you showing that. Is that available through the city's just annual city budget release?
The slides?
Yeah.
We can just email you the slides.
Oh, okay. That works too. I just didn't know if you're pulling these just from the city's budget.
I aggregated it, but it's definitely available as part of every year's budget. We disclose
Yeah.
what kind of increases we're giving to general employees, what our property tax increase would be.
Perfect. Okay. Thank
It
you.
also, Eric, it's spurred a question for me too. Can you speak to the vacancy rates for general employees, fire at present? Do you know? You were saying that the increase in wages correlated with vacancy rates need to be filled up. And I'm just wondering if you have an idea in those other departments, how they're doing.
I can't give you specific numbers to date just because I don't have it right in my head. I will say that on Tuesday, we presented our quarterly report. And that was a publicly available report. You can see it on the work session. And within that document, there was our quarterly vacancy percentages that's available.
Okay. Do you have a general idea of what they show, or if you don't want to speak?
I don't want to speak out of turn here. I can say that the citywide vacancy rate decreased from Q1 to Q2 from a 10 to 7-ish%. But in terms of getting into department specifics, I don't want to do that.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to now talk about some areas where we've had cost growth that produces strain on the overall city budget. First thing I'm going to talk about is PERSI. So the city makes contributions to the state retirement system known as PERSI, and the contributions are not discretionary, nor is the rate elective. It is, handed to us to say, this is the contribution rate that you're going to pay to maintain, your status within the system. So for fiscal year 25, the rates are going up. For public safety employees, which would cover both police and fire, the rates are going up by 10.5% year over year, which has a $975,000 general fund impact. About 450,000 of that is related to a benefit enhancement related to retirees. And then the rest of it is attributable to normal growth. General employees, their contribution rate is going up by 7%. And that is a $500,000 general fund impact. In total, when you look at just rate increases, it's about $1.475 million for fiscal year 25, which is just under equivalent to just about 1% of that 3% growth that we were talking about. So that's before you consider compensation increases. And when you do compensation increases, there's a tack on PERSI increase. This is just rate.
Is this an abnormal statistic? I mean, is this what you'd expect every year, or?
That's a difficult question to answer. They don't raise their rates every single year. There's a lot that goes into their decisions to raise rates based on overall funding position. But they forecast rates to go up the next couple of years, and there was a rate increase in the current year as well.
Is there a set period of time that they do increase, like every 3 years, or not a set?
They're evaluating constantly. So there are projected rate increases in the future, but they make an annual decision whether they're going to move forward with it or not.
Do you know any of the projected in the immediate future, or is that there?
Yeah, so they are expecting rate increases to continue the next couple of years. I can't, in this meeting here, put it into terms similar to this. but we expect rates to go up. If you look at fiscal year 25, we would expect PERS to constitute about 10% of our general fund budget. When you get out to fiscal year 2034, assuming the growth rates that we have projected, and there's a lot that goes into that, we expect it to consume more like 14%. So an increasing percentage of the general fund revenue is being taken up in PERS. PERS is just one example of where we have increasing costs in the city, and I apologize, this is kind of small print here. But I like to look at things in relation to property tax, which again is constrained at that 3% year-over-year growth rate. I'm gonna look at, just pick on a few of them. So software is an example. If you look at costs in the average cost from fiscal year 22 and 23, and compare that to the average spend between fiscal years 2017 and 2019, costs are about 70% higher in the general fund. When you look at fuel costs, about 60% higher using that same method of comparison. And then our insurance costs are about 50% higher. I spoke to PERS, so I'm not going to dwell on that one again. But I'll speak to this next piece and then I'll show a graphic. The way we support capital projects here at the city is through a transfer. We make a transfer from our general fund to our capital fund. And the capital fund is where we account for major equipment purchases. So things that would be applicable to this meeting would be like vehicle replacement. So our marked fleet or unmarked fleet, major repairs and maintenance. So everything from City Hall West to our park system, and then capital projects, whether it be fire stations, infrastructure type projects, right? If we look at fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 2024, you can see what our actual expenses or actual contributions were here in the gray. And the orange represents what they should have been if they would have kept up with inflation. By fiscal year 2024, there's an inflationary gap of about 25%, a portion of which we're hoping to fill as part of the fiscal year 25 budget, but that gap will still not be fully closed. So there's some pretty extreme cost pressures on the city in keeping up with the growth and supporting the community. That's all I had prepared, but I'm happy to.
He only had
That's
15
all,
minutes,
yeah.
so yeah. You just have that with you at all times. We appreciate that.
Sure.
So he does.
I-
Anything.
So if you have specific questions for Eric, I've thrown him under the bus, you're welcome to ask them at this time related to that.
Eric, are you available any other time? Like, can we contact Eric?
Yeah.
After we think of some stuff?
Honestly, yeah.
We'd be happy just to bring him back so we can have this conversation all together. I think that would be, we're happy to. So if next time we're together, if you want to let us know you'd like to have him available, we'll work on his schedule too and plan to do that.
Most of it's on the websites and stuff too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it's not, okay.
We can email this presentation.
That would be
To
nice.
you, so you can go back and digest it if you'd like.
Eric, if we were to independently evaluate the things that you were explaining to us there, can you point me towards what documents we should be looking at? What's on the website? I'm not very familiar with all. I mean, is all that information available to us publicly?
All of this is certainly public information. Now, whether we'd be able to find it, super easily, things like this would be included within our budget document. You're not going to see a chart that looks like this. I aggregated it for this presentation, but you could certainly pull the data and replicate this. Same with something like this, right? The budget document that's going to be released next week for fiscal year 25 will these numbers are a little bit preliminary, but they'll largely align with what you're seeing here.
Does the website allow us to go back? as
Yes,
well?
yeah, so if
So
you go.
every year it's on there?
Yeah, so you can go to Department of Finance Administration's website, look for budget library, and there will be a tile for fiscal year 25 next week, but fiscal year 24, 23, and so on and so forth. So you can go back and cull through prior year's documents for information. This slide, again, you're not going to be able to find a picture like this in the budget document, but if you were to look and read prior documents, have contracts in front of you, you could replicate this.
So that's broke down pretty generally. Is there a way to see like actual line items of what goes into what? Like how much money that was spent on this, how much money was spent on that?
Specific. There's another resource that you can go to. It's called Open Book. So it's our open budget portal. And it links to our budget system. So that would be another resource if you're trying to replicate historical information. You could go there.
Okay, thank you.
What's the city projecting for for wages for general employees going out the next 5 years?
There's an annual so good question. There's an annual evaluation that happens every year, right? So within our forecast, we assume a 3%, but as you can see here, it deviates. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's something less, but you have to have a baseline assumption.
Thank you.
So just if I could take a quick minute. Sure. Ask before we broke last time if there was any messaging or message that we would convey to you about the proposals that we made. Clearly 2 and a 2 and a 1 and a 1. That seems like, boy, that's a slap in the face compared to, we asked for 6.5 or 5.5 and you're coming back with 2 and 1. What's the messaging? I just want to say that the fiscal reality that we find ourselves in as we look at the projected budgets for the coming year and years in no way speaks to the value that we place on our employees, especially our police officers and let's say firefighters as well, and public safety. Clearly, the city contributes a generous portion of the budget, over half, to public safety. So I would just say the officers that do the work day in and day out, the officers who are dealing with problems and issues and crises and people who need their help are performing obviously a valuable work. It's not like we're taking off a glove and trying to slap you or them in the face and say, you're not worth it. We're not giving you anything. We are looking at the constraints placed upon us by the budget and by the projections that we are seeing. And believe me, this is the first presentation Eric has made about budget. He has been in talking to EMT, to the executive management team of the city.
Okay.
We've been receiving this message for the last few weeks as we go into the budget build process and talking about how we can make do with a much smaller projection than we have been used to in the past few years. Frankly, we're in a much different place as a city financially than we were 2 years ago when we signed the contract with last time. And so it's not that we want to say we value your work way less than we did 2 years ago, or that we don't value our people or the work at all. That is certainly not the message we want to send. I personally am grateful for what I have seen over the last couple of years, or almost 2 years that I've been back at work. Is I see people doing good work, doing great initiatives to accomplish the goals of the city and the police department. We could be happier. So many of the things that we see progress that the agency. I think we've done a lot of really great things. Not that we don't recognize that and want to reward the good. We have to are legally prohibited from property tax percent. When we look at those increasing costs, like software and vehicles and you name it, city's interest that we have more police officers, not less. We don't want to want to hire less people. We want to hire more officers, and I think we have tremendous support from the mayor and council to increase the number of officers, but with that number comes greater costs, especially government. Well, I'd love to, come in and give everybody a 10% raise. It's just not fiscally viable to do so. It's impossible when we look at explanations about what we're looking at this coming year and then years to come as far as those kinds. Certainly not meant as an insult when we offer to start our negotiations at the numbers that we did.
I think I got the vibe.
Can I ask a couple more questions, Barry? Is it safe to say that that you are anticipating a 3% increase then that's your max for general revenue increase based on property taxes? Is that what you're projecting for the coming years?
Yeah, so similar to the compensation, there's an annual discussion that occurs as a baseline. You build in 3%. There's been extreme pressures on the community when it comes to property taxes based on the statewide formula that's in place, which has led to council in prior years, doing 0%, 2%, 2.45%. So property tax, we evaluate annually. Compensation, you evaluate annually as well.
And just to clarify, Eric doesn't decide. Decision. Decides how much of that potential 3% property tax to take.
Can you give us any insight on new construction increase, where it's been and where it's going, or from a expectation or a planning perspective, not a decision making perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So in most years, it's equivalent to about 1%. And 1% for fiscal year 25 is approximately $1.8 million. So anytime there's new construction, we try and direct that funding to services to support that growth, right? So in years past, when we've had new officers come online, or in fiscal year 25, when we're adding a new fire station, new construction is the perfect nexus for that, because it's services in support of the community, and we've built up flexibility as a result of increasing development and taxable base out in the community. So you take that money and you put it to work into the community through that mechanism.
On you were describing how Percy is consuming more and more of the general fund, and having not being in tune with that whatsoever. I'm wondering if you can explain to us, generally speaking, if you understand why.
Yeah, so there's multiple reasons why Percy costs will go up. One of it could be, one factor is as headcount goes up, obviously you need to, support retirement costs for new positions. The second factor would be as compensation goes up, there's a mathematical formula. So if we have assumed growth for city staff, Percy costs also go up. And then the third factor is rate adjustments independent of those first two things. So as the PERSI board and folks that administer our PERSI system determine what the correct funding level is to maintain, their status is, their funding status, they will translate that into rates. And oftentimes there are rate increases that are required to maintain their funding position. So those three things kind of together make up what goes into the PERSI rate and why you would see an increasing percentage over time.
So are you saying that Percy, I guess that it makes sense why Percy would ask for more, like it would be more expensive over time, but I guess it doesn't explain to me, or I don't understand why it takes a bigger chunk of the general fund revenue. It seems like the increase in headcount and the increase in compensation is going up as our revenues, and so they would all kind of go at the same rate, but there's a discrepancy here.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. The rate increase is independent of staff growth, right? So if they're looking at their funding position and saying that they need to increase rates by 10.5%, we're not growing our compensation by 10.5% for fiscal year 25. So you get disconnects, right? Baked into that. So as we have multiple years of forecasted PERSI increases, that's where you're going to see that increasing percentage consuming of the budget.
I think to boil it down to pop terms or layman's terms, if you have PERSI employees making money, that's one thing, but when they live longer and they retire, those rates that they are and costs go up, PERSI is mandated to keep their funds solvent and make sure levels, and the only way they have to do that is to increase rates. They're unlike us, we can't just increase taxes more than the 3%, but they can increase rates, match their. We don't have any choice but to pay those, or we wouldn't be in the system.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
that was a very impromptu, very impressive impromptu. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I think the one other thing I think we can accomplish, make progress on today is we went ahead and revised the proposal we were speaking of earlier regarding the workout or fitness certification. I got to get my terminology right. The right proposal. And so I have a revised that we can send you and leave you with.
Okay.
I will place the. You should see it there. Like it loaded it right at the top. It's city counter revised to union proposal I. And it's the changes are to the, well, so first of all, I corrected all the references. So it's a single evaluation. And the changes are to that second bullet point, which would now read, the physical evaluation will be offered for 1 week, once per calendar year, and is optional to attend.
Okay.
And the intention would be, we would make it available for that entire week. Folks could come in whenever their timing allows. We would have someone available to proctor the test. They come in at their scheduled time, do it morning, night, whatever.
Okay.
Just so that as many people as possible would have the opportunity.
We appreciate the clarification on that. And we'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Great. Oh, we have on our end at this time. Is there anything else that
I
we
would,
can do
I was just
productive?
curious, I would say scheduling, was there any talk about schedule moving forward on your guys' end?
We're still comparing schedules, so I'll just send you an email when I have, and I'll get as many dates as I can, at least in chunks of time like we've been doing.
Perfect. Okay.
Is there still a preference? I know that when we initially spoke, the back half of the week was preferable. Is that still the case? Just so we can focus it, or do you want us to give you?
Yeah, it does help.
I think with us, it's gonna be that.
Okay, so focusing on, say, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is that preferable?
Yeah, that's gonna be the smoothest for
Okay.
the three of us.
Okay,
And
fair
then
enough.
it would also be helpful to know if you want Eric to come back, so we know if we need to schedule with him too.
Okay,
Absolutely.
we appreciate that.
Yep.
And we appreciate getting him down here. So that was. So that
He
was-
really does have these PowerPoints all
That's,
the time.
so that was a very impromptu.
We watched him put it together back.
He's got them
Wow.
all the time.
Yeah, hey, okay, well done. Okay, I mean, from our end, we'll keep looking. At this point, while we're taking this whole economic thing, is there any other economic proposals at this time or?
No,
Okay, so that's what we're working with.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, I think we kind of have the universe out there, so
okay, fair
you
enough.
should have what you need.
We appreciate that.
Non-economical? Do you have
Pardon?
any more non-economical?
No.
No.
So shall we break for the day?
We're gonna keep working.
Do
So
you think you'll have anything for us? I mean,
No,
Not by
cause
the end of today.
Okay.
just not by the end.
all right, so we won't keep our folks here. You take the room, do what you need,
Yeah, I
but
think that'd be best. We're not gonna have anything to do.
okay,
So. We want to keep you guys.
yep, no, that's fair.
Okay,
All right, well, very good.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.